Welcome back to another video here on the channel. In this one I want to cover my highlights from the Bitcoin 2021 conference that took place in Miami over the last weekend. Usually my videos are rather timeless and don't really include any news. However, with the biggest conference of the year, I figured I'd give you a rundown of the most important themes, news and talks that you should check out. The video material is all taken from the Bitcoin Magazine's YouTube channel, where you can find all the talks and panels as separate uploads. Let's start with the actual ending of the conference, Jack Mallers' announcement that El Salvador will have Bitcoin on its balance sheets and will make Bitcoin legal tender. The to-be-proposed bill is not passed yet, however it is very likely, as the president's party represents about 2/3 of the voting power. The talk, or speech, is quite emotional and definitely worth watching in my opinion. It could also be quite a historic moment if other countries follow El Salvador's lead. A member of Paraguay's Congress already announced a new relating project. As I said some time ago, our country needs to move forward hand in hand with the new generation. The time has come, our time. This week we start with an important project to innovate Paraguay in front of the world. To the moon, BTC and PayPal. Here are a few of the best moments from Jack's talk.
Yo, you guys ready for this? Yeah! Rhetorical question, there's no fucking way. There's no way, I promise you. Central banks are increasingly taking actions that may cause harm to the economic stability of developing countries and emerging markets. The kid I went to high school with is gonna lean over a bar in Manhattan and drink a $35 old fashioned and tell me Bitcoin doesn't matter? Privileged fucking asshole. The effects from major country policies will hit emerging countries economically and financially, both. Bitcoin fixes this. It's like, all right, let's launch in Europe. And I was like, you're out of your mind, man. I got to go to El Salvador. And we were onboarding 20,000 Salvadorans a day, and most of them didn't have bank accounts. And so then I got a message on behalf of the president of the country. And they dropped some really heavy stuff on me. Over 70% of the active population in El Salvador doesn't have a bank account. They're not in the financial system. And that they viewed Bitcoin as a world-class currency. And that we needed to put together a Bitcoin plan to help these people and give them hope and give them a quality of life, and that you can live where you're born in, you don't have to leave, and when you send money home, they're not going to take fucking half of it.
I will send to Congress a bill that will make Bitcoin a legal tender in El Salvador. In the short term, this will generate jobs and help provide financial inclusion to thousands outside the formal economy. And in the medium and long term, we hope that this small decision can help us push humanity at least a tiny bit into the right direction. I enter politics to leave a legacy for my country. By way of doing it, and by working with like-minded people, maybe we can help create a legacy for the world.
Central banks are increasingly taking actions that may cause harm to the economic stability of El Salvador. That in order to mitigate the negative impact from central banks, it becomes necessary to authorize the circulation of a digital currency with a supply that cannot be controlled by any central bank and is only altered in accord with the objective and calculable criteria. So as of now, El Salvador is set to be the first Bitcoin country and the first country to make Bitcoin legal tender and treat it as a world currency and have a Bitcoin on their reserves. If you need help, I'm not launching in Europe, I'll be there. We die on this hill, I will fucking die on this fucking hill. And this is why we're all here, and it's so important, and I hope you all can get out the shower and look yourself in the mirror and say, you're improving humanity, and don't you dare let anyone tell you otherwise. There's people out there that need help, and today they got help, and this is a tremendous day for humanity. It's a tremendous fucking day, and everyone in this room should be proud.
There also has been quite a discussion going on afterwards, especially on Twitter, that Bitcoiners now embrace authoritarians, but I don't agree with that. Alex Gladstein found the right words for the situation in my opinion. Important to note, do not celebrate the leader of El Salvador who has displayed authoritarian behavior. Celebrate the action, which will, over time, reduce the control that his or any following government has over the citizenry. Is Bukele doing this purely for narcissistic self-promotion, knowing that pushing Bitcoin will make him much more famous internationally? Or does he understand the deeper implications of his country being a geopolitical first mover, of being the sailor of nation-states? The point is, it doesn't matter. Bitcoin is for everyone, including enemies.
It's just another node on the network. It's another wallet. Just another president's just another Bitcoin hodler, just like all of us. The network doesn't know who he is. The network doesn't give a fuck. And if he gets mad at the network's not going to flinch. He mines an invalid block. My node won't accept it.
Let's head from one Jack to the other, from Jack Mallers to Jack Dorsey. Jack Dorsey had a very similar subject to talk about, Bitcoin for the developing world. The interview was interrupted as Jack was being questioned how he can talk about Bitcoin for everyone while he is the king of censorship. And this is a very valid point. Twitter is censoring. All the time. In fact, the day after Jack Mallers' historic announcement, this happened. But Jack Dorsey also announced that Square will develop a hardware wallet completely open source, from the hardware to the software.
Why are you on stage with a human rights activist? What does Bitcoin have anything to do with human rights? Isn't it just about investment?
Not for me. I mean, for me, that like Bitcoin changes absolutely everything, and I don't think there's anything more important in my lifetime to work on, and I don't think there's anything more enabling for people around the world. Yeah, I mean, we're considering building a non-custodial hardware wallet, and the thing we want to do is make it completely in the open. So from all of our software to all of our hardware design, will be open source. It'll be on GitHub. We want to build it in collaboration with the community. So we started a thread today just asking some questions about our design principles. We don't want to compete with the hardware wallets out there. We just want to take it to the next level and get to 100 more million people who have non-custodial solutions. If I were not at Square or Twitter, I'd be working on Bitcoin. If it needed more help than Square and Twitter, I would leave them for Bitcoin.
And he mentioned that Twitter is working on a project called Blue Sky that has no restrictions. In the end, decentralized social media is inevitable. Censorship will end whether Twitter likes it or not. But I actually do think, and I know many of you will disagree with that he has the right intentions.
Can social media be more like Bitcoin? Bitcoin is censorship resistant. Nobody controls it. What is your thought on that? What is your thought on this? It's a thorny problem.
Yes, I do believe it can. I know there's a number of you out there who disagree with a lot of actions that Twitter has taken. I know there's a lot of you out there who disagree with our policies and the way we've evolved them. I appreciate that. I recognize it. My goal in my life in this moment is to remove as much as I can the corporateness of our companies and find better intersections with the open source community. Certainly, Bitcoin has taught me that with Square, and we're doing everything in our power. We're doing everything in our power to do that. And we're trying to do the same thing with Twitter by creating a new platform, a new open source standard called Blue Sky. We're just starting it. And it will have none of the restrictions that you see on Twitter. So inspired entirely by Bitcoin, we want to do the same thing for social media. And again, I know you're not going to believe me. I know you're saying liar. I'm going to prove it to you. And then we can have another conversation later.
Next to how Bitcoin works for developing countries, there of course also has been a focus on Bitcoin in the US. Miami Major Suarez opened the conference again stating that Miami will become the crypto capital of America. To me, this phenomenon is still the most fascinating, and I will continue watching how it plays out. It's purely game theoretical. What happens if one city or state embraces Bitcoin and another one doesn't?
I believe the future of Bitcoin in the United States is extremely bright, and that you don't have to look to other jurisdictions for your future. Your future is right here.
That was Cynthia Lummis, a US Senator from Wyoming who is very pro-Bitcoin. Her panel, together with Warren Davidson, a US Congressman, was one of the best of the weekend and sometimes low-key hilarious.
Wyoming's been great on tax. They've been great on crypto broadly, and hopefully Ohio will follow suit soon. and so will other states. And unfortunately, the Congress is mostly good at, you know. They're good at preserving the status quo, right? They're pretty good at preserving the status quo, which is a very polite way of saying they don't really get much done.
I also really enjoyed the panel picturing the hyperbitcoinized world. However, it was only 20 minutes, which was rather short in my opinion. Especially when the stage is packed with the best Bitcoin educators in the world. You got Vijay Boyapati, author of The Bullish Case for Bitcoin, Parker Lewis, author of the Gradually Then Suddenly series, Saifedean Ammous, author of the Bitcoin Standard, and Dan Held, author of the Held Report. These are all must-read in my opinion. Here's the forecast that they made at the end of the talk.
When can we expect to see a hyper-Bitcoinized world? It's the first question. And what's one thing that you're most excited by under a Bitcoin standard? Parker, I'll start with you.
Based on how Bitcoin has been adopted historically and based on the trillions of dollars that the Fed is going to have to print in the coming months, years, that it would potentially be conservative to say that Bitcoin's a unit of account in 10 years. The second question is, what am I most looking forward to? Bernanke and Yellen and Jay Powell and Krugman all being proven massively wrong.
I'm going to be a little bit more conservative than Parker and say maybe 15 years, 16 years, 4 more halving cycles. What I'm most looking forward to, I think, is just how amazing it's going to be to people to realize how much more prosperous humanity can be if we simply have this incredible technology of a money that is not devalued in order to finance government. I think people are going to be astonished at just how much higher standards of living can be all over the world.
So I've got 2 answers for the first question. I would say at least a decade for hyper-Bitcoinization would be the most likely and actually conservative estimate. If we do have an event where there's rapid devaluation of fiat currency, the Bitcoin starts to surge or gets close to $1 million a Bitcoin, like a super cycle-esque moment, then we could see it much sooner, maybe 5, 6 years or so. But that would be a very unlikely outcome. I think it could happen, it's not likely to happen. And then what I'm most looking forward to is paying less taxes.
The thing is, I actually hope it will take at least a decade from here, because the world is not really ready for hyper-Bitcoinization yet.
Hyper-Bitcoinization, if it happens right now, everybody's going to be on custodial platforms. Everybody's going to be on de-anonymization platforms. Everybody's going to be on those exchanges. We are not ready to have hyper-Bitcoinization with the cypherpunk tools. So all we have to do essentially to herd Bitcoin is to not invest in those infrastructure projects, right? So nudging Bitcoin that's why narrative is really important, So Bitcoin is a social consensus, is a social animal. When you're thinking about, why did Bitcoin defeat attacks like Segwit2x, or like Bitcoin Unlimited and those things? It was because of the community of insiders, of builders, of infrastructure creators that came together and developed this narrative that running your own nodes makes you a Bitcoiner, owning your own keys makes you a Bitcoiner. And this narrative did not exist like 4 or 5 years ago. Nobody was really talking that much about the importance of running nodes, owning your own keys a little bit more. But this narrative that we've kind of instilled since 2016, 17, if we have a new narrative that's coming in and that says, actually, you know what? Bitcoin is not really for payments. It's all about number go up. Who cares about privacy? Because anyway, blah, 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 blah. If that narrative catches on and you're like a new infrastructure builder or you're a financier in the system, why would you finance censorship-resistant payment platforms or privacy wallets and so forth and so on? So I think that the thing that could hurt Bitcoin is simply us standing by, doing nothing. Let all the normies get onto the custodial platform. I don't want hyper-Bitcoinization to happen that fast because I think we need a few years to build infrastructure to allow the users to opt out of the custodial and centralized and de-anonymized platforms, at least to be able for them to have tools. And another thing is, a lot of people say, oh, sure, if they ban Bitcoin, it's fine. I have all of these really niche tools in my... But do we want to have second-class Bitcoiners, the normies, that are not able technologically to use these tools to be left out from censorship resistance. Like, okay, great, yes, if they ban Bitcoin, we're going to be fine. I'm going to be fine. I know how to use Bitcoin. I have sophisticated tools, but the normies will not. So I'm not a huge fan of the narrative that says, you know, let the government do whatever they want, we'll be fine, because we simply don't have the tools yet for the average person to be fine.
Now, these have all been talks on the macro or nation level, but there also were interesting ones on the protocol level. The presentation about the Bitcoin stack by Dhruv Bansal and Ryan Gentry was great and again, unfortunately only 20 minutes long. I would recommend to you that you check it out and understand the layered approach of the Bitcoin network and how it compares to other technologies. In the end, they compared Bitcoin to Ethereum, and I found that comparison really interesting because they showed how Ethereum is getting it backwards.
So importantly, as we've walked you through these layers from the bottom up, it's important to realize ETH is doing this backwards, right? They started off with the world computer, then they realized, oh, we need infrastructure, that's Web3. Oh, we need payments, now we need DeFi. Oh, actually, people only want to be paid in sound money, now we need ETH's money, right? We're going through this same progression, but we're doing it the right way, building it from the ground up, and we're just getting into kind of the Web3 status, which is really exciting. And I think the motivating factor here, the call to action, is by building in this layered approach and buying into this narrative that actually Bitcoin can disrupt many of these centralized intermediaries. It gives the 21 million cap, the censorship store value, defense in depth. Healthy layer 2 improves layer 1. A better internet protects Bitcoin, and useful applications for everyday users makes the idea of banning Bitcoin ridiculous, even though it already is ridiculous.
And so to conclude, Bitcoin is going to distribute everything.
My recap as a distant viewer of the conference is that it was good, but not necessarily great. I felt that some speakers were a bit out of place, Floyd Mayweather for example, and Max Keiser was Max Keiser. I mean, some people love him, I don't. To be fair, the dialogue between him and Saylor was actually good, and he asked interesting questions. Just his entrance is way over the top in my eyes. But take this conclusion with a grain of salt. I wasn't in Miami and therefore couldn't feel any of the energy. I'm sure I missed out and I hope I can be there next year. If you enjoyed the video, I would appreciate it if you leave a like and subscribe to the channel for further content. I usually cover fundamentals when it comes to Bitcoin. And yeah, thank you for watching and I see you next time.